Obi-Wan Kenobi, Episode 5. Well, okay, now we're talking, folks. After last week's polarizing episode, we start this one off on a good note, with a flashback scene on Coruscant between young Padawan Anakin and Obi-Wan. As I said several times before, this show desperately needed flashbacks between these two, and it's kinda crazy how we needed to wait until the second last episode to finally get them. But thankfully, better late than never. Now, granted, it's not technically a Clone Wars flashback as it takes place prior to Attack of the Clones. As well, to be frank, Hayden and Ewan look way too old here to fool us into believing that these are their younger selves. Not gonna lie, that alone pulled me out a bit, as I think Lucasfilm easily could have used just some CGI or deep faking to really perfect the appearance of these two here. But hey, considering the lower quality nature and tight budget of the show, I suppose this is what it is. Aside from that, you can't help but like these flashbacks that come and go in small doses throughout the episode. And I especially love that both Ben and Vader are remembering this exact practice duel at different parts of this episode. It wasn't by any means necessary to have them here, but I'm glad they did, and it only now has me itching for more Obi-Wan and Anakin flashbacks in the finale next week. Going back to the present timeline, Vader's Star Destroyer arrives to the planet Jabiim after having tracked Ben there using Lola. Before commencing the attack, Vader ends up promoting Reva to the title of Grand Inquisitor, which I personally didn't think she deserved just yet. Maybe after she delivers Ben on a silver platter to Vader, then yeah, sure, but now I don't know about that. I thought this was a tad too premature of a promotion, but hey, who am I to question Vader? Meanwhile, back on the base on Jabiim, Ben, Tala, and Leia safely arrive to the Path's base, but not long after finding out that they were indeed getting tracked by the Empire, who of which will soon be here to attack them. It's around this part that we learn that Haja is also now seeking refuge with the Path. And well, I gotta admit, I really enjoyed him in this episode. Can't say I fully bought his story on why he's there and hiding and all, but his character didn't seem too over the top and had just enough comedic element to him that seemed to fit in the setting. Surprised to say that, as I didn't care for him at all in episode 2, so glad to see he's changed my mind on him here. Anyway, due to Lola secretly messing with the gate security system, no one from the Path can leave the base, thus forcing everyone into panic mode. Ben, however, steps up as the leader, well, former Jedi General as he once was, and devises a plan of defense, as Roken and his people in the meantime try to get the gate open. And this I liked. Rather than seeing Ben cower in fear in the corner or something, he's now showing his confidence and level-headedness that we've all come to know and love Obi-Wan for. So this was definitely a plus for me. In addition, Leia also takes part in the evacuation plan, volunteering herself to help get inside the vents to deal with the cable work for the gate. Suffice to say, this was very much a Leia thing to do, wanting to help out in any way she could, even at this young age. Eventually, the Empire arrives, with Reva leading the charge to begin their attack on the base's main blast door. It's at this moment where Ben offers to try and negotiate with Reva in order to buy the Path some much more needed time. At first, I wasn't thinking much would come from this little negotiation tactic because, it's supposed to be wasting the Empire's time and all. But to my surprise, we did get quite a few questions answered here. Not only did we find out why and how Reva knew about Vader's secret identity being Anakin, but as well her ploy being to have killed Vader instead of Kenobi the entire time. Now, I'm not gonna say I'm surprised by this part by any way, as I think it was somewhat predictable that Reva would turn to the light to help fight Vader since the beginning. Although, rather than that, I guess you could say the twist here is that she's still part of the dark side, just wanting to unleash her anger on Vader for what he did to her. So yeah, she's still technically not going back to the light side per se, but she wants to fight and kill Vader, so close enough. Now, my first issue with this episode is Reva's little story on surviving Order 66, even claiming that she tried to take on Anakin herself to defend her friends, and then after failing to do so, she ends up playing dead to survive. Unfortunately, we don't exactly get to see this play out in the flashback, but I don't know about this one. I personally just can't see a youngling attempt to even get anywhere close to fighting Anakin and not get slaughtered right on the spot. I know that's a brutally dark thing to say, but it is what it is. You can't exactly sugarcoat what Anakin did at the Jedi Temple on Order 66. So there's just no way he wouldn't have left a mortal wound on her. And mind you, this would be the good scenario in a situation where she 99% of the time would be sliced up in half. So needless to say, I thought the writing in this part was pretty bad in trying to give us an explanation on how Reva survived Order 66. Yeah, sorry, ain't no way she would have survived a direct confrontation with Anakin. And he definitely wouldn't have been fooled by her playing dead. Anyway, Reva soon after uses the Force to take out the blast door and have the Imperials siege their way into the base. And this is the second thing I really did not like about this episode, and that is just how ineffective the fully trained and equipped battle-ready troopers were against some civilians. As despite being heavily outnumbered, for some bizarre reason, the Pathfighters managed to put up a strong defense, killing many stormtroopers in the process and only taking one casualty. Like, come on, how? As keep in mind here now, these are normal, untrained citizens with some weapons on hand. They're not soldiers. They made that pretty clear. They're not the Rebel Alliance military who had trained troopers, vanguards, pathfinders, and so on. No, this is just Billy Bob and friends with a blaster against an army of the galaxy's most feared military forces. It was ridiculous to say the least on what exactly transpired in this little battle. I mean, come on, I can't be the only person who noticed how appalling and atrocious this battle scene was. Stormtroopers getting shot left to right and not a single civilian casualty. Especially when you consider the troopers were dead on in front of them at point-blank range. Not to mention the civilians didn't even have any cover whatsoever, and most of them were scared shitless. Like the one guy in front who's standing there with a pipe and still somehow survives? How can anyone defend this trash battle sequence? I don't know. What's more is the fact that someone like Deborah Chow, who we all loved from The Mandalorian, directed this and thought it was good enough to keep in the episode. This alone just boggles my mind and has really lowered my opinion of her as a director. Especially when in The Mandalorian she showed that she's capable of directing captivating battle sequences. Yet to go from that to this drivel is just criminal. Anyway, despite all of the odds against them, the Path civilians fortunately, well, they got plot armor while the troopers don't. And well, also for that one dude that they do kill, and that's only because he gives up his weapon and plot armor. Basically the one guy that over 100 elite troopers managed to kill. I'm not even joking. The Empire also ends up shooting a woman in the gut, and I know what you're thinking. Oh, in the gut you say, and she doesn't have any armor, right? Well, yeah, she's dead for sure. That's an insta-kill right there. Second casualty of the night. Nope, and not even close, as her plot armor resumed seconds after getting hit, and she ended up surviving the blast. And if that wasn't already dumb and nonsensical enough, she's later seen holding her shoulder, acting like that's the place where she got shot, when clearly that's not the case. Nor does she even have a wound of any kind on her shoulder, so, yeah. It's best to not even try to figure out what's going on here anymore because clearly Deborah and everyone else behind this show didn't care or bother. So why should we anymore at this point? With everyone retreating from the Imperials, Tala then gets downed along with her droid. And in her final moments, she ends up blowing herself and the droid up with a detonator, all in an attempt to try to slow the Empire's push forward. Sucks to see that, but no, Tala choosing to sacrifice herself and her droid doesn't count as an Imperial kill. Anyway, now that we're done with the part I was most annoyed with, Vader finally arrives on the scene, and this is when things start to get good. But hold on, wait, actually, before that, Ben decides to give himself up to Reva in order to summon Vader onto Jabiim. Which, okay, fair enough, but I honestly have no idea why the Imperials agree to hold Ben inside the cave with only 2 guards. As, you know, compared to outside the base where there are many soldiers who could guarantee Ben's capture. Weird decision here, well, more so bad writing, but okay, as in the end, Ben ends up taking out those 2 trooper guards and escaping anyway. We then see Vader arrive and proceed his way inside the base to find Ben, who obviously by now has already made his way to the hangar. Once Vader does get there, we see him use the Force to stop a fleeing transport ship right in its tracks and deal some serious damage to it, almost making this feel like something straight out of The Force Unleashed. Now, while it turns out he was duped into stopping a decoy instead of the real one, this was still some highly appreciated eye candy nonetheless, and you gotta love it for that. But Ben manages to escape Jabiim safely with the rest of the Pathfighters and Leia. Meanwhile, Reva uses this opportunity to try and strike Vader down, which I'm not really sure what made this moment so special as for her to think that she's got some advantage here, but fine, okay, we'll play along. Vader nonetheless ends up completely toying with her, using only the Force for half of the duel to mock her, and then finally taking her lightsaber to deal the finishing blow. There's not much you can really say here as the level between the two is day and night, and seeing Vader toss Reva around like she's absolutely nothing is no doubt satisfying stuff to see, as with really any scene where Vader is a total badass. In the end, it's here where Vader admits that he's been using Reva this entire time, even apparently going as far back as knowing that she was playing dead all those years ago during Order 66 at the Jedi Temple. Which, I'm still not quite sure I'd get why'd he do that, as I doubt at the time he was thinking to himself, hey, maybe I'll pretend I didn't see this random youngling survive, so in the future she'll work as an inquisitor under me that I can use against Kenobi. I mean, maybe he thought that, but probably not. Either way, we also then see Uncle Fester arrive onto the scene to gloat in Reva's failure and to confirm that yes, he's still very much alive. And considering I truly did not think we'd see Fester at all anymore on this show after episode 2, it was nice to see him here again and get some closure. Although, as we know in canon, his species have 2 stomachs, so that is the canonical reason he ended up surviving. Something, truth be told, not even I knew until episode 2, but I did think it was strange that the show didn't at least make a mention of it on screen for at least the casual fans to understand, because I'm sure many of them are still surprised and confused how Fester survived that blow. It's a strange decision not to even mention that, but okay. Lastly, Vader and Fester end up leaving Reva in the hangar with a mortal wound, and before she bites the dust, she luckily ends up finding Ben's holo projector. Watching the hologram on it, Reva intercepts Bail Organa's message to Ben and learns that Anakin also had a son on Tatooine. And boom, looks like we end up with a wild cliffhanger here. No idea what Reva will do with this information, as let's not forget, she's literally supposed to be dying here. And at the same time, it's not like she's going to go yell for Vader to come back so she can feed this intel to him before she passes. Or maybe she will. Honestly, who knows at this point, but either way. I'm just happy we're finally going to dedicate an episode to Luke and the Lars family, as after spending the whole season practically on an escort mission with Leia, it will be nice to see the Lars homestead, especially as I'm hoping to see Owen finally do something badass here because, man, he's one of my favorite characters on this show, and it pains me that we've only seen him in one episode so far. Owen better be in the entire episode next week is all I'm saying. As for this episode itself, I'm happy to say I was quite delighted with it. Yeah, sure, the show still has issues with writing, strange directing choices, mixed cinematography, meh music, and the set on Jabiim looking rather cheap. But even so, I still really enjoyed myself with it. Aside with my major gripe with the battle scene, this was a very strong episode for Kenobi standards. Unlike last week's episode, which I finished feeling largely disappointed, here I ended with a big smile on my face, and that alone should tell you that yes, episode 5 was a major improvement as I hoped it would be. And here's to a strong finish in episode 6. And that was my take on this episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Let me know what you all thought about the episode in the comments below. And if you haven't already, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.